Our guest today on Essential Leadership Skills, the podcast, is Nancy Zugschwert. Nancy's purpose is to elevate, inspire, and connect people and ideas. In this podcast, she'll be talking with women facing the grand finale decades to find ideas and the belief they need to move forward, whether starting a business, writing that book, or trying to navigate a new stage of life. Join our host Barb Monson and Glenn Daniels.
This is a Touchstone Publishers presentation, your trusted source of leadership knowledge.
Welcome, Nancy. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, finally got it right. It is morning time, so good morning.
Right. So, Nancy, let's just start off with trying to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you tell us one thing that we may not know about you or your business that we and the audience should know?
Well, I was thinking about this question. I'm such a transparent person and open book that a lot of people figure out a lot about me pretty quickly. But if we just want a fun factoid that people don't know, is that I am fluent in Spanish.
Sí.
Sí, hablo español.
No.
No.
That's the length of my two words. Okay. So.
Yeah, I studied in Costa Rica when I was in college. I did a semester abroad and I took regular classes at the University of Costa Rica. So I was full immersion and really just learned as I went and came back with pretty good fluency. I don't use it a lot or practice, but I still love to speak it.
That's fantastic.
You know, that kind of hits me with a question right off the bat. It doesn't have what we're planning to do. So everybody will discover that you say something and might trip a question off, and here it is. Full immersion. I mean, full immersion into leadership skills, full immersion into personal development. Sometimes we feel like we don't have time for that. What would be your suggestion for those of us who feel like, well, I don't have time to fully immerse myself into getting better as a speaker or getting better as a business person or getting better as a person?
I think that's a great question. Well, let's use the language analogy. Full immersion is definitely probably the best, most comprehensive way to learn something. I went to Costa Rica with freshman college level Spanish skills. And in 1 month, I had an orientation program, and then I had to be taking classes at the university level. And it was a little bit of a sink or swim situation. However, take learning Spanish. My mother is 87 years old. And she has been working on Duolingo. She's been working on she added Babbel along the way. She's taken those skills a word at a time, a grammatical concept at a time. Is she fluent? No, she knows she's battling an 87-year-old brain that doesn't adopt a language like a child. But even as we speak, my mother is in Barcelona, Spain, with my sister and her husband, and she's putting her skills to practice. And so I think we just find the avenue that works for us at the life stage. But the biggest thing is to make a commitment to doing something. So if I wanted to become a better speaker, for example, I might say, you know what? I have time to dedicate 1 hour a week, and I'm going to join a Toastmasters club. In fact, that's what I did. I've been 8 years now as a charter member of a club here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I joined Toastmasters because I loved to speak, not because I was afraid, but because I knew I wanted more practice and steady practice. So I think it's just making it the priority.
Love that.
So what does that look like when you think of corporate leaders? So that's the Toastmasters is a great example. And even just I'm reflecting back on my own college experience. In college, we are immersed in whatever our study is, even though there's other elements of, the electives and things that we bring on to augment that. But once we start real life, if I can call it that, we have all these other distractions. And as you're building a career and building a home and building a family and, whatever choices you make along the way, a lot of the immersion gets put on the back burner. And so to Glenn's question earlier about how do you focus? How do you bring in an awareness of when you need to up your game in an area? And then how do you dedicate yourself to that with all these other commitments and responsibilities? Do you have a story around that or an experience around that you can share?
That's a great experience. A great question. And probably yes. I worked as a communications director at a university, a small university in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my job involved internal and external communication and public relations, crisis communication, et cetera. And so I had a steady diet. I'd have to do a daily and weekly communication to the college community of students and employees. I would help with executive communication, and there would be things that would come down the pipeline planned. And yet I would say crisis communication was supposed to be a small part of my job. But then this thing called 2020 happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I had to roll up my sleeves and develop my skills as a crisis communicator in real time. And I had to find a way. I think the first thing you have to do is figure out what from your day to day can you set aside or find help with, because you can't just keep adding and adding and adding to the roles and responsibilities you have. You'll break. You won't get the job done. But if you recognize that this thing has entered your life and it's become the priority, you have to structure your daily time in such a way that you get that messaging done first. You get the cooperation of colleagues who need to have a part in that issue, that problem you're solving. And you have to sometimes just make peace with what you can't get done. And I think that that's a lot of it for us, is that we add stress to ourselves because I'm doing this new thing, but I feel like these old things are there. I need to do. Well, we can't. And so I think it's daily. I have had some coaching recently about really taking a time every single day to prioritize what's most important, and like a priority 1, 2, and 3. And every day, your priority 1s are your full focus until they are done. And then you can start to look at your 2. And then maybe sometimes you get to your 3. Typically, those are just going to move up. And if your 2s and 3s 3 days later are still not in the 1 list, you have to ask if they're priorities at all. But those are some kind of around the circle of my brain thoughts on your question.
You know, you have written about or spoken about this idea of work-life balance. I tend to agree there is no such thing as work-life balance, but you have a different perspective. I think you call it work-life blend.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. I brought a prop.
Okay, perfect.
I have a little mini blender here. And these are great for those of us who like maybe healthy drinks and smoothies. And what we typically do is, and I don't have all the fruit and things, but I'll say, what am I in the mood for today? And I'll put some strawberries and bananas in there, maybe a little yogurt and juice, throw some protein powder, whip it up. I've got a good healthy snack. And if you're much healthier than I, you might put kale and chia and things like that in there. But what happens is, I think we have this tendency to not hold the control of what goes in here. And it's like I've started my smoothie in the day and I walk it with an open cup, and I let somebody come along and say, oh, I have this thing I want you to do. So if we picture the ingredients of what I put in here as my blend, the way I create a savory life, where I have a sense of control over what I'm doing, I have a sense of joy maybe, and the interactions, but then somebody comes in and says, here, you have to do this. And they throw like pickle juice in here. And I go, oh, okay. And then somebody else comes in and throws something in and else in. And all of a sudden the taste is just not right. And I'm no longer in this blend, this rhythm of life that works. And so I think another contrast is where I came up with this analogy in the first place is balance. I picture this as a scale. And I've got family obligations and commitments here, and I've got work, and I'm trying to keep this delicate balance. It can't work. My job says, you have a major crisis called COVID, and you have to communicate about it every day. And I'm like, oh, okay, now family, I cannot get them balanced. And so that's why the blend makes sense to me. It's like I had to throw COVID in here, which was definitely the equivalent of pickle juice or maybe battery acid or something.
Yeah, true.
And I had to then, it's like I talked about earlier, I had to take things out, or I can try to add some more sugar. Like, I know I've worked so hard this week, but boy, tonight I really need to spend time with my husband or my family. And I'm just always adjusting the chemistry of it. to try to have it be palatable at the least. There's times where that's all you can achieve is palatable. But the goal of continue to have it be flavorful and sweet. And sometimes you just have to have a reset. You take a weekend completely off, you dump every single thing out of that blender and you're like, we got a new week. What are we going to put in here? What can I anticipate is coming? And you're just always trying to adjust it. So have a blend that's manageable and workable for you.
Let me ask a follow-up, because when you were talking about earlier your priorities 1, 2, and 3, are you thinking strictly to put your priority ones in your blender?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I haven't thought about that before. Priority ones have to go in. I think that I would say no. I think there will always be those things that maybe priority 2 for the day, but they're the priority 1 over time. And so I think it's just, family and work are obviously big ones, relationships that we never want those to slide to a detrimental level of, from just work all the time. But no, I think you will not get a good blend if only priority ones go in there. It's like only putting strawberries in.
The more you've talked about work-life blend, and Glenn mentioned there is no work-life balance, and I feel like universally, just across every profession, we've all come to agreement on that at this point, and yet it's still widely discussed. It's still, I've been hearing about it for years, but it's still widely discussed. And after I heard you kind of talk about the work-life blend, the words that are standing out to me are work and life. And I find it interesting that we put work in its own category, and then life is everything else. Yep. And we separate the two. And partly with COVID, you maybe saw this with some of your crisis communication, those lines are very blurry for a lot of people now. Not everyone. Some people have returned to office. Maybe it's exactly how it used to be. For our leaders in the corporate space, I'm sure it's a challenge, though, because they do have some remote employees. They have long distance employees, different time zones, people who want different things and want those boundaries being blurred can be a good thing. And they can also be a hindrance because we don't have any boundaries around our personal life and we're answering work messages all hours of the night. So I don't know if you have thoughts on, why do we separate? Like life itself has, 35 different things in it. And then we've got work. Is it because it takes up most of our calendar time, or, how do our brains mix those together to keep the life priorities in addition to work? Is that making sense? Like, why are those the two categories?
A total sense. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's because of anything you do in the day other than sleep. What else do you do for 8 hours or 9 or 10 a day? And so I think that's where it came from. The work-life balance concept came when people are saying, I am working so much, my life feels out of balance, and the comparison. And it's actually interesting because I was in the prepared materials that I sent you, one of the phrases that I use that I like to help people with is living an integrated life. And I think that that's even more the goal. And so work-life blend versus balance is one transition. And maybe the next thing we do is what is an integrated life. I left my 9-to-5 job at that college a year and a half ago. And now as an entrepreneur and someone who's building something new that I haven't done before, my calendar is very different than it was before. I don't have my start time and my end time. I have, even a good example is to show you. And so this is my calendar that you can see. I'm sorry, it goes the opposite direction. here's whatever, that first column that's bigger is my Monday. I've planned that far out. I always write in my fixed commitments. And then I say, well, what else am I going to do? I literally put on my calendar what I'm spending time on. And it might be a work-related thing. It might be watching my grandson on Thursday afternoons, which is a commitment that I've made with this ability I have to set my own schedule. And that's how I'm creating this integration of life. And I think it really starts with identifying your key priorities, your top elements that give you life and make you the person you need to be for the most important people in your life.
Wow. That's because that's a tricky slope, I think. And like I said, that integration or the blending, that's a tricky slope. And I think we can't really get that sometimes unless we pay attention to our personal development. So I had a different train of thought about personal development until I kind of read some of your work. You have a blog. Let's see, I got the notes here. The Habit You Need to Quit. Talk to us about that. That's something, I mean, we're so tangled up, but I'm thinking if we get into this idea of the habit we need to quit and to stop quitting, we might find a little bit more balance. It seems a little counterintuitive. No, don't quit, keep going. But when I read through it, I was kind of thinking that kind of makes a lot of sense. Would you share about that?
Yes, I'll do my best. So one of the funny things about me is that I create and I have a lot of ideas and I'll put them out there and then I forget them. So I'm like, well,
yeah.
So what prompted that particular blog post was the habit you need to quit is quitting itself. And this is something that I experienced and in this blog, I share back to my youth where I tend to operate. I think we all do. We like to do best the things that come most easily to us because that's our sweet spot. I could show up. I can do this thing. I didn't have to work hard at it. It was fun. They thought I did great. Okay, let's do this. But if you are a person that a lot of things come easily to, which with the things I was asked in my youth to do, school wasn't hard. I could show up. I always said, oh, I'm so bad at math. And I got straight A's in math. And what I was saying was I have to work harder at math than I do my other subjects. So I was willing to work at it, but my brain said I'm bad at it because I had to work at it. And I was asked, I was a musician. I played saxophone starting in 5th grade, and I loved it. I cottoned to the instrument. I had piano already in my repertoire and had some musical knowledge coming into it. But I could sit first chair saxophone in my band almost effortlessly. I just played, I did well, I sounded well, I knew the notes. And so my music teacher assumed that I should probably want to be challenged. Oh, you don't even, that just comes so easily. Why don't you learn to play bassoon or oboe? Because we rarely have good bassoon and oboe players, and you would be a good challenge for you. I'm like, oh, okay, those are cool instruments. And so if you know anything about band instruments, the saxophone's called a single reed. The double reed is like where there's 2 little tiny reeds and you have to get your mouth really tight and you have to give a lot of air support.
And it really hurts.
And most people, when they're learning, sound horrible. And that's exactly what I experienced. I worked, did a few lessons, and I recognized very quickly how much work it would take to be good at these instruments. And I said, well, why would I want to do that when I can sit first chair saxophone without even having to practice, basically? And I mean, that's not necessarily a highly evolved approach to life, but it really set the stage for me of becoming a quitter when I had to do a hard thing. And when I, had to work at it. And I'd always rationalize it. I'm a good communicator. So I'd say, well, I'm so busy. I'm already involved in student council, and I have this commitment and this activity. And so I just want to be able to do a lot of things. So I'm not going to do the really hard thing. And that really was just a pattern that I found in various places in life. I would start something new, and if it was hard, I'd be like, oh, you know what? I'm just finding this is one thing too many to add to my workload and things like that. Well, fast forward, and what I found is that works okay in the school setting and in general typical job setting. You'll get a job, you learn how to master the things that you must master. People, this is what my boss is looking for. This is what this project team needs from me. But I think it takes a real discipline and a different kind of person or mindset to say, wow, this has really become easy for me. How can I challenge myself? What more could I do? How could I contribute more to the company? And I never had that natural sense. And so now but I was still rewarded. I learned I sat first chair in enough things that I always got the reward. Well, now I'm creating something from nothing. There's nobody saying, Nancy, do this, and then we'll pay you every 2 weeks. It's like, if I don't do the things that are required to market this thing I've created, or this coaching, mentoring I want to do, or even just freelance writing, which is a piece of what I do as well. If I don't go out and say to people, I'm doing this, and here's how we meet, and it's not going to happen. And I've been paralyzed is too strong a word, but I've been slowed down significantly because I didn't develop the ability to press through when it was hard.
Can I ask a follow-up question with that? Because I oftentimes hear this struggle if I'm in front of a classroom or talking to people, they'll say something along the lines of, well, the strength, I forget the name of the book.
Strength Finders?
Strength, yeah. Focus on your strengths, get better at your strengths. What you're saying goes opposite of that. What would you say to someone who says, well, no, I've been reading books that says, focus on your strengths, strength minders. How would you respond to somebody who says that to you?
I love Strength Finders, and I agree absolutely with the basic premise. I think that focusing on our strengths helps us, if actually going back to work-life blend, by doing things that are in our strong suit. They're typically things that are part of our hardwiring, how we were created, and reflect that. So you're going to be stronger and have that. But the reality is, life doesn't always put us in circumstances where our strengths are what are required. I might have a job that utilizes a few of my top strengths, but it also needs something that isn't as natural to me. And I can't just stand there and say, oh, I'm so sorry, boss, I don't have that in my strengths. And so I'm just going to do these things that I really like a lot. So I think it's the circumstances and the situations that call us to not drop the focus on our strengths, but to recognize the strengths that are underdeveloped, that we need to call in for a reason or a season to become the person we need to be for that role. And then over time, I'm sorry, it keeps coming back to this. We get to say, do I like that in my cup? Do I like that flavor in my life? And if I don't, then I'm like, yeah, next job, I am going to go for one that doesn't need this much strategy because it hurts my head.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just thinking through how many times I probably could have used that when I was in my corporate career. Because every year we focused on setting goals that would develop what I was least good at. And it was not often that I had a leader that I did have some, but they were the exception that would recognize, hey, you're really good at problem solving, or, I see these qualities in you that would really benefit another department in our company, or, let's tap into those a little more. Mm-hmm. I think even just the corporate annual objective setting is often designed around what do we most need to shore up. I believe in goal setting for a certain purpose, but corporate objectives are often to make the company better. Now, they're not designed to necessarily maximize all of your skills and talents. It's to set company objectives and use your workforce to meet them, understandably so. So how do you maybe advise, if you were on a stage in front of an executive team or corporate leaders, how would you be advising them to bring out the best talent, to bring out the strengths, but not have people quit, the perseverance? Like, how do they bring that into their workforce to achieve the best results?
Yeah.
Great.
That's a really good question. And I was thinking about one of my organizational experiences, in that the first thing you have to know is it's going to take work. And I think it's one of the reasons that it's not done as much, because most managers, anytime you get to a managerial position, you have so much pressure on you for your own personal performance, for the performance of your department. And then you're like, oh, great. Now I got to get to know each of my employees individually, and, that kind of thing. And so the first thing you have to do as a manager is to decide, do you care enough about people to want to create an environment where people can thrive? And then you prioritize, you help teach your team to prioritize. Here are the things that we're always going to need the most from you. Here are your P1, your priority 1 tasks. And these I will always be looking for from you. We can't bend on this. But I'm really interested to know, how do you want to grow and develop as a person, as an individual? If you have something 3-5 years from now, that you want, I'm just going to make it up because this was part of me. I love public speaking. I loved training. I started out my career in training and development after I took 14 years out of the workforce to raise my kids. I came back and I was just in a writing role, and I was always behind the scenes. I was oftentimes the ghost voice of other people in the organization. And I'm a person who likes to be center stage, and it was very anonymous. And I would have loved it if, my boss had been saying, what, we need somebody to present on behalf of our department over here. I'm busy. The other managers are busy. Would you go in, fill in? Look for small opportunities that you could give to feed someone, to help put that flavor in their cup. And they don't have to do it all the time. I think we think if we offer an experience, I've now got to make that part of their job all the time. But maybe they just want a taste of it. When I was the mom with my children at home, you'd have a kid, Mom, play with me. And you'd like, oh, I have the laundry to do, and I have to do dinner. And I'm also kind of working part-time, and you're doing all these things. And I feel like I couldn't do it. And I would find that if I would literally sit down for 15 minutes and set a timer, my child was satisfied. I'm thinking I have to set aside my whole day to play to make my child happy. If I just give 15 minutes of time to him, he was like, great, Mommy, thanks. I'm going to keep doing this now. And so a lot of it is just that perspective of the small doses of things that we can do in developing the people around us. It doesn't have to be a major initiative. Wow. Did that answer your question?
It was great. Yeah. Thank you.
Kind of change the subject of flow just a little bit, because this ideal of us personally developing, getting better. You say we should pay attention to where we are, not where someone else thinks we should be. But everything in this work life points to what other people think of us, what we think we should be. Especially as a speaker, we got to be concerned, speaker, writer, all those things. We got to be concerned about where other people think we are, their opinions of us. How do you balance that?
That's a good question too. You guys are really good at this. You should do a podcast. Oh, wait.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah. We should do one in the mornings too, right? No.
Before anybody's awake and finish their first cup of coffee. So it's all context, isn't it? I think that it's, there's never like the answer. And one of the things I'm finding so much in like the online world as you get into your area, there's people coach you on this, our 5-step program to achieve this, and our, the perfect thing you need to do your perfect day, all of these things. And maybe this is just over time, and because of my age, I'm just learning so much about contextualizing where you are at in the context that you are, that this is who I am. The more I become like, this is who I am, and I know where I thrive. So I'm faster to recognize the times I'm in a circumstance where I'm not thriving or not able. People might want things from me, but the more we grow in our own sense of self, who we are, whose we are, the more we're able to say to someone, even no, gosh, I really appreciate that you need that. I'm not able to provide that, and that's in a circumstance where you don't have to. Now, job world, you don't always have that no in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to say, I will absolutely do my best, but I tell you, this is hard for me. Sometimes it's a little negotiation to say to a boss, you're asking me to do something that's either out of my comfort zone or out of my skill zone. I'm really happy to learn it. Could you help me find what I can set aside while I spend the extra time that I need to be able to do that well for you? And it's this process of negotiation. I think so often we don't think we can ask. We don't think we can negotiate. I saw a TikTok recently about someone teaching simple salary negotiation. HR people I've heard multiple times say, I can't believe how many people don't negotiate when they get the job offer. They just go, oh, okay, it pays this, instead of saying, wow, I'm really excited about this job and I would love to take it. And I feel like I would not only love to take it, but I would love to stay at it longer if the salary could start at this level. And then it opens that door. So I think it's negotiating for yourself in those circumstances, Glenn, where, you know what you want, what you need, what you're being asked. There's times that a no is optional and the times when a no isn't. And you just work to make it work in the circumstance in the moment. And I think it's always okay to come back and renegotiate too.
Wow. Good.
I think one of the keys that you just said was knowing what you want and what you need. And I think we've probably had some similar experiences. And when I grew up in my corporate career, I didn't think I had those choices, or I could negotiate or could push back. And I think that when you do that over a long period of time, you do lose sight of who you are and what you want. And so it becomes even harder to get out from under it. So is that part of what you're doing in your business now? Kind of post corporate career, raising kids? Is it digging out and having people refine and reclaim where they are and what they want?
I think it is. So I'm working with women primarily who find themselves, the word that I've been really using and leaning a lot into is floundering. And this is really my own experience. I feel like my shift from job world to self-employment, entrepreneurship, I have floundered. I feel like just that sense of I'm busy, I'm working, I'm doing the thing that this guru said to do. And I signed up for a mentorship group. Okay, I got to learn marketing. I got to learn to get online. I got to be on video, but I'm still, oh gosh, look at that. I'm still not making money. Well, and you just flounder. And I've come to start to shift my floundering, but you don't do all the things all at once. You start to have a victory in one area, and then you start to think, you just start to think, okay, what's the lane I'm in right now? Where's the place I'm at right now? What's the thing that I need to do to solidify something, to anchor to something? And then you got a little solid foothold that lets you go, okay, what's another thing I can work on, and another thing. So I'm really seeing self-development is much more modular than linear. And that's helped me a lot. That I don't have to go, well, first I get to this point, and this point, and now I can look back, I've checked it all off. It's like, no, I'm really going to work on my fitness right now. And that's a goal that I had. I really work on my fitness because my health is so important. But I really need to work on my finances. So what do I need? What information am I lacking? That kind of thing. Does that make sense?
It does. And just kind of to close us out, how do you take all those things you've learned and how are you applying them from a business standpoint? What are you doing really right now to help others and serve others? What is it that you're now producing and offering to help others?
Well, thank you for that invitation. I actually am using that word that I talked about as kind of a foundation, and I'm creating a program in coaching, and there will be a course coming from floundering to fabulous. And it's the F words that you need to flourish in life. And so it's really funny to call it the F words because I'm a person who doesn't use the F word, but there's a lot of amazing F words in our language that really guide us. And for me, the foundational things that we want to focus on, if we look at the components of our life, this blend really, it kind of comes back again and again, is faith, family, friendships, which would be relationships, finances, and fitness. I think that those are areas that are good umbrellas for the major areas of our lives that will make this blend solid, that will make it tasty, and that will give us a foundation, another good F word, to success. And so I just picture the way I like to work with people is to come in and not just say, well, first we're going to look at this and first we're going to look at this. We'll do an assessment and we'll say, where do you feel like you're floundering the most? Are you upside down in your finances? Well, I'm not a financial guru. I'm not going to help you do that, but I will help you identify what about your finances is the struggle. And then I want to connect you to people, resources, programs that can help work on that. And I'll go and ask it, go work on that. And now if you want to come back, let's work together on another one. Are you struggling with your relationships, your friendships? What kind of friend are you? Are you practicing good communication skills and good relational hygiene, things like that, terms that I have incorporated. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm really excited. I work one-on-one and I'm starting some group coaching programs as well.
Fantastic. I think I put the website up there so people can go to your website and take a look at it. I highly suggest people read the blog. There's a lot of things that we don't have time to cover that your blog covers very well. But I do want to ask one final question for me. What is it what questions should we have asked you that we did not ask you? What questions should we have asked you that we did not ask you?
You should have asked me why I'm making all these changes at this stage of life. I just turned 59 on Saturday. And I think this is a stage of life where a lot of people are slowing down and shutting down. So you could have asked me that. You want me to answer it?
Yes. Yeah. Perfect question. That's a great question. Would you mind answering that?
I would love to answer that. I had this thought this morning and I really, it helps me. I believe it's never too late to write your best chapter yet. Our life is not like this book. Think our life is a book. It has chapters. It has chapters that are joyful. We had kids, we got married, we did these great things. Most books have those chapters. I always call them chapters we wouldn't have written for ourselves. Those are the hard ones, but those are also the ones that make it interesting. Tell me, would you ever pick up a book and you just read page after page? There's no conflict. There's just like, oh, they were born. They live this happy thing. They did like, oh, this is boring. So we have those chapters that are hard, but make it interesting. But we get a sense of, it's easy to acquire a sense of regret. The older we get, we look more and we see, oh, I didn't do this, or I failed at this. And I just want to have this approach to what I call the grand finale years, where I am about to write my very best chapter. And it's the best way I can be an example to my children. It's the best way that I can show even my grandchildren that life is a lifelong journey of learning and adapting and changing. And I was out to dinner on Saturday night. My husband had to go out of town. My youngest took it upon himself to take mom out for sushi. And he said, what are your goals this year, Mom? And I thought, this is the last year of my 50s decade, and I'll be 60 next year. And I said, such a good question. I said, you know what? I am going to write a book. I've written so many words in my life and my job, but I've never written a book. And I really left that conversation declaring that this is actually going to be my best year yet. So it's never too late. And if you need a reset, to me, that's where you start looking at those components. Where are you at with your faith? Where are you at with your family? Do you have relationships that need attention and you need to fix those? You're running out of time. You need to do that. Where are you at with your health? What are you doing to take care? Start where you are. Don't try to be, gym rat if that's not your thing. Can you go for a walk today? And just really start creating the building blocks and putting the ingredients in. Sorry, one last time. Blender. So anyway, I think that would be a good answer to the question you didn't ask.
Well, that's fantastic. What a fantastic question and answer. Nancy, thank you. Thank you for showing us that
Yes, thank you.
time isn't infinite, so we do have to pay attention to those things. We have to pay close attention to our blender, knowing that there's times it's going to taste like pickle juice, but it's also never too late to write your best chapter. So I think Glenn and I both are probably in agreement. We can look forward to your book and what your next chapter is going to bring and the people that it will surely impact. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. You as well. This was a delight. I'm very honored to be on here this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Barb, I tell you what, that was really insightful, I thought, in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. It's I like her view of the book and the chapters, and you have chapters that you wouldn't necessarily write. And I think that sometimes we want to forget those chapters. And so I will probably do some reflecting this week, even on my chapters and how they all make up a story and where we are today. And then what are we going to do about it? Right?
Well, yeah. I thought that really tried to put a different perspective also on the work-life balance. It's a challenge for us to balance. And, you know me, I say there is no such thing as work-life balance. It's just life.
Yeah.
Okay? But the idea of work blend, that was just super powerful.
Yeah.
The work-life blend was just super powerful. The idea of blending it. Okay. Yeah. And you may have to put something that doesn't taste so great, but maybe you can cover that up by what you want to do. And I'm not like I try to have those things as well, and try to keep it balanced and keep things going. But it's very powerful. There's one question I wish I could have asked her that I had on my list, but then it kind of ran out of time. I think she talks about this idea that your personal development is not on a trajectory. It's not a linear trajectory. It's not a straight flow.
Right.
And I would like to get a little bit deeper into that. So maybe that's food for thought for another interview down the line.
Yeah.
But I really appreciated her wisdom there. It's especially when we started talking about the strength finders. I've always had an issue with that, and I've always had people come to me, and I think she said, "Hey, that's the way it is. You got to start off, and you got to build that way."
Mm-hmm.
Very appreciative of that overall flow of all that. I think it was very, very nice. And then because I'm a little bit older than she is, quite a few years, but the idea that your life doesn't, your life, just because I'm 65 now, that's the official retirement age. So that doesn't matter. The best year ever is this one right now.
Right.
So
right.
I like that. So
yeah, I was struck by when she was talking about the negotiation or things that you don't know you can ask permission for. And I was always someone that worked with a lot of people, but I took a lot of responsibility and I was kind of a solo sufferer, if I can call it that. And my very last corporate job, I think it took me that long to learn this, that this was okay. I was a CFO for a machining company. It was two separate companies, but the same owners. And the president and the CEO was remote from me. So we talked regularly, but he set aside time every week. You've got a CEO and a CFO, and he would really play that leader role for me, knowing that I was the leader every day. And he would look at my to-do list and he would give me permission essentially to let things go. And I hadn't really experienced that up until my whole career. I just had to get everything done because I never asked. I never asked what's most important. What do we need to do to drive the company forward? What does the workforce here most need? What do our customers most need? I just thought I had to do all of it. And then I had to go home and do it all there. So she touched on that a little bit, and I was feeling that. Like, I would advise anyone earlier in their career to start asking those questions.
And that I kind of forgot. It's been 30 years, really. Well, not quite, but that I was involved in corporate America, at least 20 years, and that did bring it back to home. Like, okay, geez, what's my priority? What do I have to do? So I know that I try to let people find out what your top 3 things are, and focus on that. Well, I hope that Nancy will hang out in the green room so we can go back and talk to her real quick. But I thank you very much. I think this was a great podcast. I hope we can keep on battling through them and have even great information like that continue.
I agree. This is a lot of fun. It's a great day.
Okay.
Thank you for connecting with us here at Touchstone Publishers. Please join our group Essential Leadership Skills and share your leadership knowledge with us all.